You know the vibes. Welcome back to another episode of the Hoop Genius podcast brought to you by NBA 2K24. It's myself, Mo Mootsie, alongside me as always, the great Scott Perry. How you doing, Scott?
Man, I'm doing great, Mo. Doing great. How you doing today?
Blessed. I'm blessed. I've
You're
just been
blessed.
for a checkup with the dentist. He said it's all good in the hood. So
Yeah,
we looking sparkling fresh. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? It's
that
sparkling
no, that's
fresh
good.
today. Look.
And you in the center of the sports world right now. That Wimbledon is still going on
Oh,
over
that's
there with you
right.
too.
That's right.
Exactly.
Wimbledon's going on, and England are in the finals of the
That-
Euro 2024 competition.
that's
Just know
awesome.
that, Scott.
Yeah,
If we win
exactly.
on Sunday, there won't be an
Yes.
episode on Monday.
You mean Mo? Is that a bigger celebration than the Celtics winning?
Oh, no. Not for me. Not for me. But when England win, the
Right.
entire nation,
Yes.
so
I
even
get
people
it.
who don't like football join in, even people who
Right.
aren't English join in. It's
Right.
just, I don't want to jinx it by saying what will happen. But
Yeah.
you know how you were talking about the power cuts you get over where you live? I
Yes.
think the entire country will be shut down for at least a day, if not a week, if they win on
Right.
Sunday. Because they've not won anything since 1966.
Oh wow! I didn't
This would be
realize
like,
that.
imagine
Is that
your
long?
Detroit Lions won a Super Bowl.
Well, yeah, exactly.
But
Good call, Mo. That's a good call. I got to admit that. Hey, it's a good call.
speaking of Detroit, though, our other friend from Detroit, Mr. BJ Armstrong, a lot of people have been
Yes.
asking me, what's
Right.
happened with BJ? Where's BJ at? They said to me, Mo, have you and BJ had a fight? Is he not on the show anymore? I said, guys, chill out. BJ Armstrong is in Las Vegas.
Yes, he is.
No one wants to be stuck in their room on a laptop doing a podcast in Las Vegas. So let the man enjoy his summer. And he'll be back next week. And the three of us will continue to do a great show.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously he's at work. He's following one of his big clients that he just signed this year. Isaiah Collier just finished up at the Summer League in Utah. And
How's he looking, Scott? Give me the.
Oh,
I didn't see the Utah.
hey,
Summer
you didn't
League.
see-
Give me the scan report.
Played very well, in particular last night, the closing game for the Summer League. Thought he was the key factor in Utah winning that game. Played a big-time third quarter where he really sparked that entire Utah Summer League team with his ability to get in the lane. He's very physical getting in the lane, understands how to play the point guard position. He's very poised for a young player. His shooting is improving. But the biggest aspect I thought yesterday in keying the victory was his defensive ability. And that was one of the things that was been critiqued about him coming out of USC this past year was his lack of defense there. Well, he showed that he can defend and defend at a high level when he puts his mind to it. Had some big time steals that generated a lot of transition activity for that Utah team. So it was great to see a young player do some big things that I think will transfer, that I know will transfer over into the regular season. So now they are on to Las Vegas, as you mentioned, and hopefully he can continue to play well there and show that what he can bring to Utah Jazz during the regular season this year as a rookie.
Yeah, it's interesting around the draft process. You know, I was telling people, you guys should pick Isaiah Collier, and they said no. And I said, listen, that season at USC is kind of unique circumstances with, you know, his teammate and whatnot. We're not going to get into that, but his defensive skill was always there. You could always see, if you know what you're watching, you could always see that he has the tools to be a very good defender, especially in a league now where teams are trying to pair up all these defensive wings and defensive guards. We talked about the Celtics. We talked about the Knicks. Having Collier on your roster there is fantastic. But the big question mark everyone had was they would say, well, he's not a good shooter. And I said to them, hey, listen, he will be a good shooter. Because obviously I had the info that our friend Mr. BJ Armstrong was helping him with that jump shot every morning at 5 a.m. And how's it looking now, though, Scott?
It's getting better. You could tell that he's gaining confidence in that. And he's picking and choosing the right spots to shoot it. He hit a big three yesterday during that run, but looks a lot more comfortable and relaxed. It will continue to get better, Mo. That is the one skill, going back to my very beginning times in the NBA back in 2000, that shooting the basketball, guys will and can get better at that once they get to this level because of the amount of hours they can dedicate to it. I always use the Tracy McGrady example, who I recruited as a high school player, who was not a very good jump shooter at all in high school level. He was a terrific player, but was not a jump shooter. Goes to Toronto after a couple seasons. Now you see a guy that developed into an elite scorer in the NBA and really was comfortable shooting beyond the arc. And I just use him as one example because that was real personal to me because I knew him and I knew the people that were developing him in Toronto. And there's many more players like that. You just see guys, get better and better at that skill, and you can tell he's gaining some confidence in it. And so hopefully he will continue to play well in Las Vegas and continue to show the people in Utah as well as the rest of the league that he's going to be a real contributor as a rookie for that Utah Jazz team.
Well, as BJ and Isaiah are heading over to Las Vegas, someone who's heading in the opposite direction home from Las Vegas is Kawhi Leonard, who will not be with Team USA for their Olympic adventure. Scott, are you surprised?
Not totally surprised because, well, I'm not totally surprised because of the health issue.
Yeah.
And that was always a question. And I know there was concern, from the Clippers side, there was concern from USA Basketball going into this. And I'm sure Kawhi himself, was he good enough and talented enough and deserving to be one of those 12 guys? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, you got to make sure you have 12 healthy enough bodies when you get ready to go over and play in this competition, at least to start it. And obviously, there were some things that through the practice sessions that led them all to believe that he wasn't as healthy as he needed to be a real contributor for that team. So they decided to make the change, and they tapped into your Boston Celtics.
Hey, you got to have some winners on the team.
Exactly.
I mean, a lot of people are asking me, like, why has Derrick White gone to replace Kawhi instead of Jaylen Brown?
Yes.
And I understand there are certain opinions people have with Jaylen's relationship with certain brands and things and comments he's made about them. However, when we look at it purely from a basketball standpoint, right? These are 12 of the most talented basketball players on earth. There's not enough minutes, especially because FIBA games are shorter than NBA games. There's not enough minutes to go around.
Mm-hmm.
Am I right in saying that it's not going to be 12-minute quarters, right? At the Olympics, it's going to be 10-minute.
No, you're right. No, they're 40-minute games. They're 10-minute quarters.
So there's already 8 minutes less in the rotation to go around.
Yep.
You've already got all of these elite level scorers. And I'm not saying that scoring is the only thing Jaylen Brown can do. But
no, that's right.
In Derrick White, you're getting someone who will be perfectly fine to sit on that bench and maybe not get a minute in a game, or maybe just get 5 minutes at the end. But if you bring the reigning finals MVP, you kind of have to play him.
Yeah.
And they've already finished kind of the training camp and what they've been getting ready for. They're on the way to go to Abu Dhabi. It's hard to integrate a finals MVP into the team rather than a role player who can just come in, shoot threes, and play defense.
All valid points, Mo. But let's be clear now. Jaylen Brown is one of the 12 best players over here in the 100%. U.S. right now.
100%.
And very well deserving of being on that team. Now, I don't know what his interest level was in playing. I would assume that it would be high. So
he was in Saudi Arabia last week on a pilgrimage. So I'm assuming he wasn't sitting at home waiting for the phone to ring.
No, exactly. So my guess is that Derrick White probably was already, quote unquote, in the queue if there was an injury to a perimeter player. And the points that you mentioned, like you said, you've got the best players in the world, the United States, born players all on the same team. You got 40 minutes of playing time. And there's not going to be, there's going to be one or two guys for sure that play a limited amount to maybe even no minutes in some contest, depending upon the nature of those games. So Derrick White, I'm sure, who's a terrific player in his own right, but if they're bringing him over there because he's an additional defender, he's going to be a team guy, and I'm sure they believe that he will be more comfortable in accepting, like you said, and in your words, accepting a lesser role in terms of playing time. Not to say that he doesn't want to play, because he's a competitor, and I'm sure he wants to be out there. He wants to be out there. but I'm sure that he understands what they're going to be looking from him. And one of those things is just being a great team guy and providing whatever they need, however much it is in terms of minutes or however little it may be in terms of minutes.
Do you know what I would love to see now from Jaylen Brown? I would love to see the reverse Embiid. So instead of playing for USA, you go and trace your family tree and find out what country, your ancestors lived in, or you can adopt a country. Jaylen, if you want to come and play for Great Britain, I will call the Prime Minister now and try and get you a passport. If you want to come and save our basketball over here, you just let me know, my brother. I think that would be really cool if he went and played elsewhere. Just as a point of pride, it'd be pretty fun to see that happen. If he could find a way to make himself French.
I'm really hopeful for him in all seriousness, because he's deserving of being on that team. There's no question. Even look, you can make an argument even before them even putting Kawhi on the team. I mean, again, no disrespect for Kawhi, but knowing going in the door, Jaylen has been a very durable guy. So hopefully in his instance, come 2028 when they go to Los Angeles, that Jaylen Brown, I'm hopeful for his sake, and I'm sure he's going to continue along the trajectory that he is as getting better in this league as a player, that he will have an opportunity to represent the USA in the Olympics in 2028, because in my estimation, very well deserving of a selection and being
there
one of those 12
are other factors
members
at play, because there's some players on that roster, respectfully to them, that I think someone like Kyrie Irving is a better basketball player than some of these guys, but he's not on the team. And same with the season Jalen Brunson just had compared to a couple of the guys on that team. I'm looking at them thinking, is this really the best 12, or are they just the most popular, most well-connected 12? But they are all great players. It's
they're trying to, they would, as with USA Basketball would tell you, they're trying to put together, quote unquote, the best team. And sometimes when you say the best team, it may not be all the 12 best individually talented players. Look, it's a difficult job. Being Grant Hill and Sean Ford and those guys from USA Basketball, to narrow it down to 12 players, because I believe you probably could get another team of 12 guys from the United States, and that would be awfully good as well, and have a chance
they
to
only
win
beat
the gold
the
as well.
select team by 1 point in practice.
Yeah.
That 17-year-old Cooper Flag was giving them work. He could have taken Kawhi's place.
One thing historically, I think even you go back to the Dream Team, the original Dream Team, they may have lost a scrimmage to the select team that practiced against them.
Didn't Michael Jordan's college team beat like an all-star NBA team as well?
Yeah. So those things happen. They happen fairly often early in the early stage like that, and people get all, I don't want to say panic, but say, oh wow, look what happened. But by this time this team hits the floor after playing all of the friendly games, if you will. They had one last night against Canada. And I believe they have 5 or 6 more before the Olympics.
Yeah, they got some in Abu Dhabi. They got some in London as well next week.
Yes.
I'm hoping to catch those.
Yeah, it's like anything else. The time spent, once you start spending more time and really, these guys have been competing against one another for so long, not playing together. So after a couple of weeks together, I'm sure they're going to look a lot more cohesive and be a tougher team to beat. I
think it would have been cool if they took Cooper Flag, like how they took Anthony Davis when he was coming out of college, right before he got to the NBA.
Yeah, and if you go back to the original Dream Team, they took Christian Laettner. Yeah, they took
Christian Laettner
instead of Shaq. Exactly.
Now that's pretty crazy when you look back on
it.
But
yes, yeah, but hey.
But
Things
anyway,
happen.
we were talking about Derrick White's ability to come in and play a role. I wanted to talk about another player who's coming into a new team this season to play a role, and that player is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who has joined the Orlando Magic. He's obviously left the reigning champion Denver Nuggets as a free agent, and although Denver say that they offered him a very similar contract to what Orlando offered him, KCP says that that's not the case. I don't really know
Right.
what the true story is from behind the
Right.
scenes.
Yes.
But it's absolute insanity to me what Denver is doing this offseason. Given that they're 1 year removed from winning a championship, they've got remarkably worse. We'll talk about them later on. But I am very excited for the Orlando Magic because now you've got your star player in Paolo. You've got Franz, who's just signed that new huge contract. You've got Wendell, who's obviously had health issues, but hopefully he can stay healthy. You've now got KCP, who slots in at that 2, and you've got Jalen Suggs at the 1. And then off the bench, you've got Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, Anthony Black, Jonathan Isaac, who signed a new deal, Mo Wagner, who signed a new deal. It's pretty exciting times down there in Orlando.
Absolutely, Mo. Couple things stood out to me right away when they made the signing of the KCP. First, the Orlando Magic are taking a page out of what the Boston Celtics did this past year, what Milwaukee did a couple of years ago, in obtaining the same guy in Drew Holiday. Not to say that he's as good as Drew Holiday, but you're going to get a guy, a championship caliber guy, two-way player to add to a
the
mix
only
of young
ones
guys.
who have won multiple championships in the last, 6 years?
Yes. And so you're bringing that to a young locker room that doesn't have a lot of playoff experience or have a lot of guys in that locker room who have made deep runs or, in this case, become NBA champions. So I think that's very wise on their part when you can add that ingredient. So that tells me now they're ready to take the next step. They went to the first round of the playoffs this year, had a couple wins against a good Cleveland team. They got a taste of what it's like. So now what you're saying is, how do we get at least past the first round? And so we, because we want to be regulars in the playoffs and we want to keep fighting our way up the ladder, up the playoff ladder. So that stands out. And then secondly, what you see in the Orlando Magic do, and you're seeing teams around the league do the same thing. As much as we are putting the importance on shooting the basketball, and it is very important, again, you got to defend to become a champion. And I use your Boston Celtics again for an example. They've got two excellent guards. We just talked about Derrick White going to play in the Olympics, and that, Drew Holiday was already on the Olympic team. Two excellent two-way guards, but who really hang their hats defensively. Jalen Suggs is a very good young defensive point guard in this league. KCP has established himself as a very good defender at that two-guard position. So now, as you look around, that's what teams are trying to do. OKC, the moves that they made this offseason was to bolster their team defensively, adding Alex Caruso in the backcourt, who's another great defender. And then they went in the front court and added Isaiah Hartenstein, like we talked about, to bolster
Knicks
the
added
defense.
another wing defender. Everyone wants wing defenders.
We have the
becoming
Knicks
a more
added
valuable
Mikal
commodity
Bridges.
than shooters nowadays. And if you can do both, like a guy like KCP, then it's an ideal fit.
There's going to be more and more of a premium, in my opinion, if you're trying to ascend and eventually become a champion. The more two-way players that you have on your roster, the better chance that you're going to have to compete.
I'm going to have to just pause you right there, Scott.
Okay.
This is one thing, and I'm going to go on a rant like an old man, because when I talk about this, I feel like I'm 80 years old. When we say
you represent the new school.
When we say two-way player, okay, why is it acceptable for guys to be one-way players? Why is it a thing to be a two-way player? Like everyone doesn't play defense. Two-way player is, if you say a two-way player, that's like someone in NFL who could play on the offense and play on the defense, because that's two different squads, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But in the NBA, if you're on the court, play some damn defense. And I feel like I can say this because my team has 5 guys who all score and all defend.
Yeah, no question. Yeah, so you're spoiled, Mo. You're spoiled
by
the team that you follow.
And then they say, my favorite player is better than this player because he scores more points. And I say, okay, it doesn't matter if you score 30 points if you're giving up 35 on the other end. This notion of being two-way player, everyone should be a two-way player by default. That's what we're talking about with Team USA. They should only have two-way players on a roster. Why? Because they're two sides to the game. Sorry, I just had to get off my chest.
No, I understand. One thing, Mo, and it's interesting you bring that point up too, and we, go back to the Olympic team. When you get all of those good players on one team like that, even if they weren't very good defensively with their NBA teams, they see everybody can play defense. Defense really is a mindset and an approach. You don't have to be the fastest, strongest, whatever. You just have to be committed to being able to do it and want to do it. And you see guys on the Olympic team when they come together like that, they're gonna all put their best foot forward to defend now because they don't want to let the guy down next to them, and they know how much is riding on.
They don't want to lose their minutes.
They don't want to lose their minutes, exactly. So now you going to the NBA. We have a handful of players in the NBA who are fantastic offensive players, and their offense is so good that coaches will never take them off the floor and will allow them to maybe relax or take plays off defensively and try to put defenders around them. But as we know, Mo, as we see, and you can get away with that for long stretches, in the regular season, maybe a round or two in the playoffs. But as we watch the Dallas Mavericks, and one of the reasons why they eventually were able to make the finals, Luka and Kyrie both in a couple of those series along the way, both against the OKC and the Clippers in particular, those first two series, they upped their effort and intensity on the defensive end.
Even in that one game in the finals, we watched it like
Luka
plays
the one they won
for four more games.
And that was the one they won.
And that's
the one they won. So now, and we talked about this before, once a player shows you he can do it, like Luka did, like Kyrie did, and they've done in spots, now the key for them is going to be able to do it more consistently throughout that run in the playoffs. But the team that consistently defended were your Boston Celtics, Mo. And they did it at all five positions. It was a non-negotiable. And even guys like Sam Hauser coming off the bench, who had no reputation as the defender, I thought did a very good job defensively.
That's my favorite part of the NBA.
Exactly.
My favorite part is everyone sees Sam Hauser just like this white guy who shoots threes, and they think, oh yeah, let's ISO him. And then he just holds up and causes a stop for the defense. And I'm like, okay, have you not been watching all season long? But back to the Magic. They're loading up on these two defensive guards, and then you've got Franz and Paolo. I'd say they're looking kind of at the Celtics, how they've got the tandem of Brown and Tatum at those wing positions. And then at the big position, they've got different options they can throw out there. They can throw Jonathan Isaac at the 5, like we saw them do in the playoffs. They've got Wendell. They also re-signed Goga Bitadze, who's a very underrated player. He would have been a really underrated bench player for a contender to pick up.
Yes.
I was looking at the Nuggets thinking they should go get him to come off their bench to give some good minutes behind Jokic, but we'll get on to the Nuggets. They got Mo Wagner back. They got Gary Harris back for some more veteran leadership. I'm excited to see Orlando, right? But let me ask you this, Scott. We talked about like the top 3 teams in the East the other day, or the top 4 teams in the NBA. Do you see Orlando cracking into that top 4 and maybe overtaking a Milwaukee or maybe overtaking a Philly if they can't figure it out?
They'll have a chance. I don't know if they're quite there yet. Want to see them get on the court together after training camp this year, and once we get deep into the fall to see how they're coming together. A lot will depend on how big a jump Paolo has made. Can he become a more consistent shooter from the perimeter? I know he can attack the rim, knows how to use his body. He's not afraid of the big moments. How much better does Franz Wagner get? The two of them. How much do they grow and are able to just start taking over games and dominating games on a more consistent basis? That will dictate if they can creep into that top three. But they are definitely, as I sit here now, they're definitely not a team to be taken lightly. That is for
Defensively,
sure.
they could have one of the top
Yes.
defensive in the NBA. The part that concerns me is the offense and I guess
Well, the
kind of
shooting.
spacing and how fluid.
Yes.
And obviously
Yeah.
KCP is a good shooter to add to that group. But we saw in the playoffs there was some stretches where the offense was just horrible.
Well, see, that's because and we talked about the lack of 3-point shooting. KCP should add to that. But how much better can Paolo and Franz Wagner be this year? Because if they can start stretching it and making threes on a consistent level and shooting, I don't know what Franz Wagner shot this year. He probably shot better than Paolo did. I don't know if you have the numbers there in front
I'll
of
pull
you.
them up. Carry on.
But if those guys can be 37, 38% from three, that gives them an excellent shot. And can Jalen Suggs? He's the other one.
Well, Franz had a horrific shooting year. He shot 28% from three.
Yeah, so yeah,
but it was last year he was 36% and he went down to 28% this year.
Yeah,
and
so he's got to get back to 36. Yeah, so if both of those guys have to be 36 plus.
Yeah,
when you're talking about getting into the top three. And where was Jalen Suggs this past year?
I know he was steadily improving. He started his career as a 21% 3-point shooter, and he's now a 40% 3-point shooter.
Yeah, so he's got to continue along that track as well. Bringing back Gary Harris, I'm sure that was one of the reasons they brought him back historically. He's been a solid.
Yeah, if he just needs to get healthy. He's been a great 3-and-D player. He just needs to be healthy.
Exactly. So, but shooting is going to be big for them in terms of making that jump from, what did they finish this year? 4 or 5? They were 5. They were finished 5.
They were in that 4 or 5 matchup with the Cavs.
Yes. So they were 5th this year. So to move up a couple spots,
but they were only 5th by 1 game. You know what I mean? I think they could maybe get to that 3 spot. Who knows? But here's what I wanted to say. This summer has been an absolute atrocity for the Denver Nuggets. It has been horrendous. You are 1 year removed from winning a championship. You lost in a game 7 in the semifinals, so you didn't even get back to the NBA finals, let alone the conference finals. And you didn't make any moves to get better. I don't know if they're doing these moves and letting KCP go to kind of save money in the luxury tax scheme of things, or I know they say in their press conferences they want their young guys to have more playing time to develop, but you have the MVP of the league in his prime on the court. You have to go all in. If you don't want to do that, like I said about Chicago Bulls, sell the team. Because I heard that there was a rumor that, well, not a rumor, I heard that they were going to try and trade Michael Porter Jr. for Paul George. And that was a deal that was on the table, but the Clippers wanted extra picks in the deal and they didn't want to do that. But it's interesting that they would pull the trigger on that deal because they must have known that they were losing KCP anyway. But now you're looking at bringing back the same starting group as last year, except no KCP. Instead, you've got Christian Brown in the starting lineup. And then, Scott, I'm going to read you the bench, right? And if you're listening to this and you're a casual NBA fan, I want you to tell me how many of these names you recognize. Trey Alexander, not Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Trey Alexander, Julian Strawther, Hunter Tyson, Peyton Watson, Dario Saric, Jalen Pickett, Vlato Kanchar. Yeah. I mean, we talked about our concern with Denver being the depth this year that just finished.
This past year, no
and
question.
somehow they've made their depth even worse. I don't get it.
It's tough. We know the importance of having depth in this league when you're talking about winning the championship. And we said it at the beginning of last year. Our only pause with the Denver Nuggets in terms of repeating was the loss of Bruce Brown and Jeff Green. They weren't able to overcome that loss this year. Now, I do think Christian Brown got better as the season went on this year, became a reliable a sixth man for the team. So now he's going to be tasked with taking the next step forward and becoming an everyday starter. But now that's another guy you're taking off the bench, and you thin the bench out even that much more. Peyton Watson played a lot last year.
I'm a big fan of his, and I think Julian
Yes,
Strawther
and
can be really
defended.
good as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, and Julian Strouth, just again with young players, and they know better than we do, because they've been around him every day. Just how ready or how poised he is to take a big step and be a reliable seventh or eighth man for this team this year, because he's going to have to be. He's going to be thrust into that role.
Yep.
Like the skill set coming out of college. So,
And
we'll
they
see.
got the rookie Deron Holmes, who they were desperate for in the draft. That they
Yes,
made sure they traded it up to get. Do you think he
yes,
can contribute right away?
Well, I believe he's going to have to, because you're going to need that size up front, and he brings a little athleticism. He's not a young college player. He has some substantial collegiate experience. So I believe he's going to get thrown right into the fire. And hopefully for their sake, he's a guy that can be, he's a different type player, but can he be what Derek Lively was for the Dallas Mavericks this year in terms of a rookie you could depend on night in, night out, to contribute and do what he does well. And, Lively's case obviously was protecting the rim, running the floor, and finishing lobs on the offensive
And he was
end.
a 12th overall pick, not the, what was it, 20,
Yes.
20 something? I can't
Yes,
remember what
exactly.
Not to say that where your pick matters, but I would be shocked if the Nuggets have scouted a guy at the late 20s who's going to make a bigger impact than Derek Lively made last year.
And especially in a draft that probably was not as strong as the one the year before. So
I mean,
but we'll see. That's the beauty of it. You'll never know with a young guy like that coming in playing. Yeah. Maybe they get a chance to play him a little alongside Jokic as well, so that he can gain some confidence in playing with such a great player like that. He'll learn from him in practice every day. That's for sure.
Jokic
so we'll
also makes the game easier for his teammates. Like, has anyone heard from Bruce Brown since he left Denver? You know what I mean? Like, has anyone heard from Jeremy Grant since he left Denver? Like, I get it. Okay, cool. But maybe they have seen stuff in their practice facility that means they think that these young players can take the lead. But I just think if you've got the MVP and you are 1 year removed from being champions, you've got to go all in. Forget the luxury tax. Just pay that. Don't worry. You're a billionaire. Just pay the luxury tax. It'll be worth it if you win the championship. And go, instead of losing players in free agency, you should be getting players, or at least getting something in return if they do walk. I don't know.
The moral to it, Mo, the moral to the story, really, they're gonna miss KCP. In my opinion, they're gonna miss him. That was a big loss for this team.
Absolutely. So now when I look at the Western Conference, though, where do you have Denver kind of ranked? Because we talked about OKC getting better. The Mavs just came out of the finals. The Timberwolves, this was like a breakout year, I guess, for the Timberwolves, because the season before they weren't too good. But the Timberwolves are going to be up there. And then do you have the Nuggets kind of as that fourth team just because of the Joker's greatness?
Yeah. Last year, going into the year, I believe all of us on this podcast had Denver at the top.
Yep.
To respect reigning champs, and rightfully so. Even though we were a little concerned about the bench.
Yep.
But now what has transpired over this past season, those teams you just mentioned, OKC was the number 1 seed, young team. They're not going anywhere, got better with acquisitions they made in the offseason with Caruso and Hartenstein. Confidence is rising. I don't see Denver being better than them, at least on paper right now, as a team. Minnesota, same thing. Minnesota got over the hump in beating Denver last year. So, their confidence level will be high playing against this team, and they're bringing their team back intact. So, I would rank Minnesota ahead of them right now. And I've always been a guy that respects teams that win the conference. So, Dallas Mavericks winning the conference championship and going to the finals, and then adding to their team and getting a world champion in Klay Thompson, I'm going to put them ahead of them right now. And so those three teams right there for me, I'm going to start there. Now you start talking about Denver. Now you start talking about Memphis coming from way back in the pack last year. Now that Ja Morant's going to be back healthy. And there's a whole lot of other teams in that mix.
But Scott, it goes down to what I said yesterday and the day before. If you're not making moves to get better, you're getting worse. Yes. Because everyone else around you is getting better. That's a metaphor for life and the NBA. How about that? I'll leave you with some wisdom on this one.
No, great piece of wisdom. And I will say this, and even when you win it, Mo, you still have to find a way to tweak it, or if you feel comfortable enough running it all back together like the Celtics have done and taking care of everybody and make sure nothing happens to that entire group. And it makes sense in Boston's case this year too, because again, a lot of that run was done without Porzingis too. Exactly. So now,
it's like you're adding Porzingis.
If right, exactly. So they need that. If they can have him for the entire playoff run, now that's a different Celtics team. He only played 4 games in the playoffs prior to the finals.
Exactly.
So anyway, no, this is all. You're right, Mo. You gotta every year you gotta figure out a way. In my opinion, whether you're on the top of the mountain or you're right there near the top, you got to figure out a way how you're going to tweak your roster to get a little bit better.
And these teams at the bottom should find a way to get worse, because the way Cooper Flag played in those USA practice scrimmages, man, I'd be desperate to get that #1 draft pick if I was a bad team this year.
And, and there's some other good young players in that draft. He's not the only. I mean, he's terrific young talent, but there's probably 4 or 5 guys. Keep an eye on a young man by the name of Ace Bailey.
Okay.
Ron Harper's son, Dylan Harper.
Oh, yep.
Those two come to mind first, because I had a chance to spend some time out of USA basketball last fall and see a lot of these top young players play. So really good class. I'm sure they'll all go to their respective colleges and do well and put themselves in positions to be high picks in the 2025 NBA draft.
Man, well, we've got a year till that. Until then, you guys subscribe to the show, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, because we're not going anywhere. We got more moves to break down, more teams to talk about. Let us know in the Discord if you want to hear us talk about your team. Scott, you know what to tell them.
Get buckets.
Hey, see you guys next time.